So we have a strong, actually evolutionary wired behavior for success to be successful in groups. And David's going to talk about some of this tomorrow too. And part of the success of groups is we're actually deeply wired to be altruistic. We're deeply wired to want to have positive social relationships. The fairness thing is, so imagine everybody's all in a tribe and they're all working together and hunting and fishing and life is good. And there's one guy who's lying around, he's drinking all the beer and he's not doing any work. And that is called the freeloader problem. And we are wired to get pissed off at the freeloader. And if the freeloader is really bad, to expel that person. And expulsion in those days meant death. And so this reaction of unfairness, this very strong, by the way, it's not just people go rationally, I'm only getting $1. No, they get really pissed. And that is, we are wired to do that. And it comes out of this deep altruism and resentment of freeloader that we are built into, that completely contradicts classical economics. Okay, so at the simplest level, human beings are wired with two neurological cognitive systems. And one we're going to call the me map, and one we're going to call the we map. So the me map is about self-preservation, it's about me, and it's really the part that classical economics addresses the most. So go back to the ancient times, the bear comes out of the woods, and you jump and you run self-preservation. And we have a lot of wiring, a lot of parts of our brain that address that. Tomorrow, we're going to show you a video of a lecture by one of the greatest neuroeconomists in the world, named Tanya Singer, who's going to actually walk you through parts of the brain and show where that comes from. So we have that wiring. The we map, the collective map about relationship, is another deep part of the brain. And we actually have things called mirror neurons and a whole series of ways that we're organized. You know, when you say somebody has good vibes, you know that from your mirror neurons. They're actually a set of neurons that are assessing other people and kind of figuring out, are they friend or foe in your relationship with them? And these turn out to be huge drivers. So one of the things you're going to learn is that in many cases, to evoke behavioral change with other people collectively. Remember, a building is a collective experience. People live individually in apartments or in communities, but it's also collective. And that you do much better in reaching collective circumstances. That can be cities, it can be neighborhoods, it can be buildings, by going through the we map as a communication methodology, as a response mechanism, than the me map. So we often have this classic mismatch where you're really trying to get a social or a we response, but you're giving a me message. So I'll just say one more thing about the me. The me is all self-preservation, because that's the part. Okay, so let's go back in evolution. When everybody's sitting around at night and telling stories around the fire and having a great time and really enjoying themselves, that very positive experience is related to this whole we neural network. When you're running from the bear, you're in the me territory, and it's about cortisol and your adrenals pumping, and it's not really a happy experience. When economics says it's all about individual self-gratification, maximizing individual benefit, that message neurally is interpreted by your me map. And so that very message isolates you from social response and social relations. And what we've learned is, and so it's very hard to achieve social benefit also, for example, through just targeted economic stimulus when those go to the me. All right, so I'm going to take you to page 22. You don't have to turn to this now, but you may want to go back to later. And we describe 12 mental factors for this in more detail. So the first one is in classical economics, it assumes that emotions are irrational. That humans are very, very rational, and it's just their emotions get in the way, and if we could just get over emotions, everything would be right. It turns out that emotions are very irrational. They've evolved from this evolutionary behavior that I've described. They're wired into our genes, and there are a lot of experiments they've discovered where you test people, hundreds of, thousands of different groups of people, different cultures, and they all respond have the same emotional response. For example, this resentment of the freeloader. So by the way, when the phrase welfare cheat came out and became such a powerful Republican phrase in the mid-90s, it was because it went right into the anti-freeloader wiring that we have. So there are emotional responses that are actually hugely rational and very, very scientifically predictable. So we should understand that. And actually, as we do our work in trying to change behavior in buildings, observe that. This is a very, very new field, and one of the most important things all of you can do, so we don't know the answers, is to begin to take this knowledge we're giving you and test it with your employees and your populations, and feed back to us and say, gee, I just learned such and such a circumstance, such and such a messaging, such and such an emotion, such and such a thing works in the following way, and share it with all of us and let us experiment with it too. Okay. The second one is that in classical theory, there is a distinction between the brain, the mind, and society. And what we're learning is the brain and the mind are deeply integrated, and society is more than just a collection of individual actions. In a way, you know, we're learning this from network theory, from systems theory, that the whole is greater than the parts. And we see that manifesting in many ways. And one of the things you're going to hear more about is how when we create groups and group mind and groups focusing on a common objective, such as greening a building or positive behavior, you know, one of the best examples, many of you are doing this, I'm just going to call on Joanne at some point, she should talk to us about, she has a population of ex-offenders, people coming out of American prisons, which are one of the most destructive to any sense of self and positive behavior, and they're just astoundingly incorrect, bad environments. And she's created a group mind that literally the minute people step into the castle, it subsumes them into a whole new way of being. That the society is greater than the individual. If you think about it, we are all in the behavior modification with our tenants. One of them is to get them to pay rent on time. Another is to follow our rules and regulations. There are, you know, to pick up their litter. There's a variety of behavior that we're always trying to encourage with them. So this is just another one. But you learn how very powerful the social behavior is. Decisions are made unconsciously. We think we're rational about our decision making, and we're really, really not. Again, this neural network that John was describing earlier is very often responsible for how we make decisions. We'll get into later something called the status quo bias, which is we're really heavily weighted, given two choices, like something you're doing now and something you could change. Like you're driving in one direction, there's a little bit of traffic, but there's another road that may have less traffic, but you just kind of keep on the one you're on. It just is a bias to stay with what we're doing. There's a chart in here about percentage of drivers who donate organs. So, you know, if they agree to donate organs if they're in an accident. And so in Denmark, it's 4%. And in the United Kingdom, it's 17%, Germany, 12%. And then in Austria, France, Hungary, Poland, Portugal, it's 100%. And Sweden, it's 86%. So why is that? And it's the places that are 4%, when you get your driver's license, they say, would you like to donate your organ? Check the box here. 4%, 6%, 8% people say yes. If when you get your driver's license, they say, should you be in a car accident, your organs will be donated unless you check this box to say no. And 100%, 87%, 92% of people don't check the box. It's the status quo bias. It's just kind of how the people are more likely to kind of do the standard than the alternative choice. We see this unconsciousness all the time, and one of our goals is to discover how to use it positively. How can we use this to actually get better results?